going on, guys? This is Mr. Teej 66's Movie Reviews. I am Mr. Teej 66. Just got out from Mission Impossible Fallout, and my overall thoughts were this was a pretty fun, solid action movie. Some of the reviews have been calling it one of the greatest action movies ever made, or the last couple years. I'm afraid I don't quite agree with that. It was fun, it was well made, but I don't think it's even close to being one of the greatest action movies I've ever seen. Excuse me. The plot concerns Ethan Hunt having to find these three nuclear balls, they're plutonium, nuclear bombs. They're about the size of a basketball, and they keep trading hands. There's a lot of double crosses, and honestly, the plot gets pretty complex. So I'm not really going to say anything more than that. The plus side, the action is well filmed. I have to give Christopher McQuarrie, who also did Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, which I haven't gotten to. Hopefully I'll be getting to that and Ghost Protocol very soon. Does a solid job with the action scenes. They are well shot. They're well composed. I'm never confused about what's going on. Some of the stunt work is off the chains. I mean, Tom Cruise, of course, does the majority of his own stunts. There's a great sequence where he jumps from building to building. There's a great helicopter battle. The action is pretty solid in this movie. The plot is, as I said, very complex. There's a lot of double crosses, back and forth. For the most part, I understood everything, although I was a little sketchy on a few issues, but the overall gist of it I got just fine. The acting is first rate all around. Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise. He's very likable, once again, very human action star. Even though he's doing these ridiculous things, I always feel there's an element of humanity in Ethan Hunt. Probably with the exception of the second film, where he's basically a superhero, but they've all been pretty consistent in his characterization. Ving Rhames, it's just great as always. That man has the coolest voice around. He plays the computer tech very well. Him and Cruise have some great back and forth banter. They've been, he's been around since the first film, which is, 22 years. So they have a natural rapport, which is great. Rebecca Ferguson is great too. As in the last film, she basically is the most complex character probably of the entire film. I mean, really. She has the most layers to her. Even Ethan Hunt isn't quite as well developed as her. I would absolutely see a spin-off with her character in a heartbeat. I think she can absolutely carry this movie. The main villain, who's also in Rogue Nation, does a very solid job. I forget the actor and the character's name off the top of my head. He has a big beard this time. Very intimidating. Great voice. Villains have to have a great voice, and he absolutely knocks it out of the park. What else? Practical. Henry Cavill. How can I forget him? Who plays sort of a, liaison to the CIA. Rocking the mustache. I'll say that. It's the mustache that fucked up Justice League. With that crappy CGI. Like that. Oh, God. Thankfully, his mustache gives a great performance too. Yeah, I'm actually rating the mustache. As for flaws in this movie, unfortunately, it's a little too long. I felt it dragged in some spots, not to the point where I was sitting there come on, what's going on? But it could have been chopped down a little bit. Sometimes the plot gets a little too complex. I'm going, wait, what? Huh? Okay, I'm really paying attention and listening, and a lot of the plot is just not incomprehensible, but you definitely need to pay attention, which is a good thing, I think. For a summer blockbuster that forces you to pay attention and use your brain, so I wasn't complaining too bad, but there are times when it gets a little oh my God, what is going on in this movie? But for me, the biggest flaw of this movie is, while the action is well composed, well filmed, some great stunt work, Christopher McQuarrie, he doesn't have quite the knack for intensity of, say, J.J. Abrams in Mission Impossible 3, or even Brad Bird in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. I thought those two films were much more intense. The action was, kinetic, still coherent, but, by the end of both those movies, I was, exhausted. I was like, holy shit, wow, I just went through the fucking ringer. And his two films, are fun. They're not boring. They're exciting, but they just don't have the same level of to it that those two films have. So, I have to knock it down a little bit. But overall, I would give this movie probably a 7.7. It's not as good as even Part 3 or Ghost Protocol. Those are my two favorites of the sequels. The original is still my favorite because, it's just an old-fashioned almost Cold War era even though doesn't take place during the Cold War, like a very 60s style, Cold War spy thriller. But this is a totally fine, totally decent attempt, spy action movie. The Mission Impossible series has been pretty consistent in its quality since the third film. Even the second film, John Woo's action scenes were more just, they had more oomph to them, like, they were overly stylized, but they were a lot of fun. But this is totally fine, totally decent, but, you should definitely check it out. I'm sure they're going to make another one because it's going to make a shit ton of money, and I'm interested to see where it goes next. This is Mr. T666, and I will see you next time.